That was really the complete loop. I mean, that's like most of what you need to do is what we just did. The only other part that we're sort of missing here that we're going to need is how do you get information from one page to another page so that you can gather information to do something. And so we're going to see an example of that next. So the next thing that I want to look at is the functionality for printing the contents of a course list. So I'm going to build this sort of backwards. I'm going to start at the end and work my way forward. So the end point is where I already know what course list I want to print. And then I can just loop through the instructors in that and print each one. So I'm going to, once again, I'm going to have an endpoint for that. So static method app.route, and this one's going to be print instructor list. And then there's going to be a view function for that called print instructor list. And then the first question is, well, okay, so how do I get the list that the user wants to print? And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use get method to pass the name of the list in as a parameter. So the URL that I'm going to access, let me scooch this down a bit. So the URL that I'm going to access is going to be print instructor list and then question mark. And let's say instructor list name equals. And then let's say CIS and %20 is a space in HTMLEs. It's actually ASCII 32, which is hex 20. And then let's say 122. So instructor list name equals CIS 122. And when I execute this, it's going to print the contents of that course list. So the question mark is used in the get method of fetching web resources to separate arguments from the path in a URL. So what you have in the URL is http:// HTTP is the protocol, and then localhost is the name of the machine I'm connecting to on the internet. And then 8000 is the port. And then this part from the slash down is the path on the file system for this computer where the document I want is located. And then this question mark means I'm going to supply arguments using get method, which basically means I'm going to put them in the URL. And so what comes after that is going to be key value pairs. So the first key is instructor list name, and the first value is CIS 122. And then if I wanted to have additional key value pairs, I would use ampersand as a separator, and then I would have instructor name equals Mark %20 Goodman and whatever else, something equals nothing. So basically these arguments are being specified as key value pairs that come after this question mark as part of the URL. And that's what get method is. So later on, we'll see how to post information where you're supplying information not in the URL. So that's what I want to have work here. And then, so I'm supplying, and I actually only want the first one. So I'm supplying this value as a get parameter, and then how do I actually access it in my view function? So here's my print instructor list. The way I get it is instructor list name is equal to, there's going to be a request global object that's going to have some properties. And request is another thing that I import from Flask. And this is going to include ways of accessing information that was in forms that got posted, and also information that was in the URL that was passed in using get method. So for URLs, it's going to be request.args, and then I can pick out which one I want by specifying the key name. So instructor list name, that's going to get this value here that's associated with the key instructor list name. And then this is basically going to be an args, and args is basically a dictionary. And that's really all there is to it. So it's really simple to get access to it. So I have the instructor list name, and then I want to actually find the instructor list that matches it. So I'm going to say for instructor list in course instructors web UI dot course lists if, and then I'm going to ignore case here. So I want instructor list lower equal instructor list name lower. So if those two things match, then I found the matching instructor list. And so here I'm going to actually display a Jinja template. Print instructor list.html, and then instructor list is equal to my instructor list. So this template will take an instructor list and will render it as HTML. And then if I loop all the way through all of the instructor lists and I don't find any that match, that's a problem. So if I get to this line without having returned HTML, that means I couldn't find an instructor list that matched what the user passed in. And so I want to write an error message. And for now, I'm just going to return H1, and I'm going to do something fancier in a while. But couldn't find an instructor list named instructor list name. Let's give it an exclamation point. And then we'll close off our H1 tag, and that will be enough of an error. So now I have everything except for this Jinja template that's going to render my instructor list. So let's go ahead and make a new template. So that's going to be instructor list print instructor list .html. And then we're going to say printing instructor list for, and then we'll do instructor list dot get name. And then I'm going to do the same thing in an H1 header. And then I'm going to have an unordered list. And then for instructor in instructor list, because we implemented the iter method for instructor list. So we overrode the iterator method for instructor list. So we can do this now. We're going to do an li, and I'm just going to print the instructor. So what this is going to do is it's going to convert instructor to a string using the under stir under method of the object. Then I'm going to close off my loop. And later on, I'm going to get fancier and I'm going to use a table to lay this stuff out into columns. But for now, I'm just going to use the same method to print this thing that I was using in the console-based version. And so let's go ahead and load it and see what it does. Oh, I have to restart my web server. And then reload. Okay, so I got an error. So let's take a look. Instructor list object has no attribute lower. Oh, I missed a get name somewhere. And actually I wanted get key. So this thing right here, this is an instructor list. And so I just wanted to get key on that, which is already lowercase. And there it is. Okay, questions on that? Okay, so now if I somehow pass in an instructor list name that doesn't exist, like 122x, I get an error, couldn't find an instructor list named 122x. But if I pass in a valid one, like 233y, it gives me the instructor list for 233y.